So today, what we're really going to be focusing on again is the client portal. We're going to talk about what the client portal is, what value it can bring to you and your company. We're going to then go into, I have some slides to kind of present to you around setting up the parent portal from the main organization account. So there will be some walkthrough in the main organization account, and then we'll get into some additional slides around messaging, communicating, because today we're really focused on how to take the client portal and leverage that from a communication aspect and creating parent goals and being able to allow parents to collect data via a software that you can use kind of through telehealth to teach them and show them how to utilize data collection systems that typically a technician would utilize. So we're going to go through some slides. We'll go through a walkthrough of the main account, and then we'll come back, do a couple more slides, and then we'll jump into the actual client portal. We'll spend probably the last half of this presentation on the client portal. Note that there will be some time at the very end for me to answer your questions from the Q&A chat. If we don't get to all of your questions and we have some time after the webinar, we will reach out to you via email to answer those questions, or we'll have your CentralReach representative reach out to you. This webinar is also recorded, so don't worry about recording it on your end, and we will have the webinar available within the next 1 to 2 days. Just allow our team some time to process it before we send it out. Okay, so the first thing I really wanted to talk about is why the client portal. What's so special about it? What makes it, what's great about the functionality and the utility of it? And what's really cool about the client portal is that it's available to anyone who subscribes to CentralReach. So whether you subscribe to CentralReach Practice Management or you subscribe to the Enterprise Clinical product, you get access to a client portal and it's free. What makes it awesome for your parents is that you can keep in touch with them much easier. They can, it's a HIPAA compliant platform, so you have access to messaging in there. You can do communication via tasks. You can share documents back and forth. So if you have videos you want to share with the parent, or the parent has a document to share with you, you can share that very easily, and it's all HIPAA compliant within the CentralReach platform. And really the hot topic recently is maintaining that continuity of care from a distance, because we're all working in different environments. We're all working in different settings that we're not quite used to, working from home, working from, having to do telehealth via a screen share with the parent. And so really the CentralReach system allows you to continue that care with your parents while providing that service through telehealth. So just a brief overview into what the client portal offers. It comes with a dashboard, so very similar to your employees. They get a dashboard. Your clients also get a dashboard with widgets, and we'll get to see some of that today. If you subscribe to CR Practice Management, you get access, and parents can get access to their schedule to view what appointments they have upcoming with their client, or maybe if you're currently working on telehealth, you can share with them, hey, I want to do telehealth at this time. Messages, you can receive and send messages back and forth. Works very similar to an email, except there's no external communication. It's all within CentralReach. You can do files, etc. through the messaging module. You get tasks, which is really cool if you want to keep track of a specific client workflow, and we'll get a little bit more in depth in task later on after we go into the client portal. Files, you can send and receive files. Again, if you subscribe to Practice Management, you can do invoicing, so you can have parents pay their invoice through the CentralReach system, and then they can do data collection. So just like your technicians can complete and do data collection via a session, your parents can also have access to do the same thing. Note just some things to keep in mind, that in order to do scheduling and invoicing, you do have to have access to Practice Management. And in order to do the data collection piece, you do have to have access to clinical. Today, we're only going to be focusing on data collection and really focusing on that communication piece so that we can continue the care with the client. We won't necessarily get into scheduling or invoicing for practice management. If that's something that you're interested in, we do have information available via our help site. So before we jump into items about the actual system, I wanted to just present to you some considerations and things to think about when creating parent goals and setting up the client portal to allow for that data collection aspect. And I'm sure these are things that you've already thought about, things that you're already taking into account. We did do a previous webinar, I believe last week, on creating specific parent goals. But just some things to note and think about, what are the parents' abilities and skills? How much time do they have to devote to the actual goals that you're wanting them to complete? Typically in the field of ABA, along with behavior reduction goals, we might work on skill acquisition goals. If you want your parents to continue that same amount of care, just think about how much time do they have? How much training will they need? Just like technicians need training on how to target a specific skill or a specific program, parents might not have the same knowledge base and might need some additional assistance. And what's great about CentralReach is we do have some training videos about the parent portal. So if your parents, need assistance on how to utilize the parent portal itself, we do have training videos. If you're wanting to teach a skill, maybe think about some video modeling that you can upload into the parent portal via the files module. It's a really cool way to show parents, hey, maybe I want you to work on tacting, which is labeling, right? So maybe I want to teach the parent how to label something or how to, probe that specific program with a client. You can upload a video model of how to do that. Think about the instructional note templates for your technicians. You might have specific instructional note templates that you include in the programming so that they have ready access via the session. You can do the same thing for parents via the session. And we'll get into this in a minute, but the session for the parent looks very similar to what the session looked like for a technician. So if you include instructional notes in your program or your goal, your parents will also be able to see that. And it's a really nice way to show parents how to measure a specific skill. Some other things to think about are what types of goals and how many number of goals do you want them to have access to? What would be appropriate for them? Technicians, it's their job to go into work every day and provide that type of care. Our parents are busy. They have their own jobs. They might have other kids. They have house cleaning tasks that they have to take care of themselves. So what's appropriate for that parent, and what types of goals or data types do you recommend? Think about, it might be easy for a parent to understand frequency or duration or, percent correct, but would they really understand what a task analysis is? Would they understand how to do time sampling? So just some recommendations and things to think about when setting up goals, because parents might need some additional training before they can actually measure a specific program that you're working on. You also want to think about documentation. How do you want, maybe if you're providing telehealth, you have a specific parent training document that you want to utilize to keep track of what you're doing with the parent. Maybe you want the parent, in most cases, this isn't going to be the case because parents, on top of having to collect data, might not have the time to actually write up a formal documentation of what they did, but, maybe a brief description of how they felt the session went. Some additional things to consider about the CentralReach system in general is that if you're going to start setting up parent goals, consider putting them in a goal bank. CentralReach, we always recommend putting in a goal bank for your goals so that they can be shared and used across multiple clients. So it would be beneficial to put your parent goals in there as well, because you might have multiple goals that multiple clients can utilize. And then you also want to think about creating a different session for a parent versus a technician. And we'll get into some of the reasons why right now with, the current pandemic and things like that, technicians aren't necessarily working at the same time that parents are, but I'll provide some reasons a little bit later as to why that would be beneficial. Okay, so now we get into just some things to think about when actually setting up the CentralReach system. So the first thing that you really want to think about are permissions and access. We always want to make sure that this is the first place that we go so that when we start introducing these things to our clients or our clinicians, they already have access and they don't have to come back to you and say, okay, well, how do I do this? Why can't I access this? In most cases, if you're utilizing the CentralReach clinical system already, the first 4 or the first 3 are probably already set up because they already have programs, but I wanted to cover them just so that you have them available to you and you'll have it in the recording whenever you come back and you want to listen to it and think about permission. So they will need basic access to the Learn module. You know, if your BCBA needs to be able to create a new program book or a learning tree, you want to make sure that they have the permission to assign the learning tree to a client. For sessions, if they're going to be creating a brand new session, you want to make sure that they have the permission sessions add new. And then in the learning tree, the last 2 are really all about what type of access and permission you want to give to the parent. So if you want the parent to have access to the learning tree, you can go into that learning tree, go to the learning tree options and do a share to client. Now, to actually give parents access to the portal, it's fairly easy and fairly simple. There aren't any specific permissions you have to turn on. Like I said, it's available to all parents. It's available to everyone who uses CentralReach. So all you have to do is make sure that you have the parent's email address on file. And I'll show you this once we dive into the parent portal. But all they have to do is really click the forgot password and enter in their email address, and they'll get an email on how to access their system. Okay. So enabling that parent data collection piece, you know, really today we're focused on data collection and communication. So 2 things that you want to make sure in the CentralReach system that you have set up is that you have a separate parent data sheet created for the parent. And the reason why we suggest a separate parent data sheet is because 1, the goals that you're working on between a parent and a technician, they might be different. So you might not want to share the technician data sheet with the parent. 2, when, you know, the whole pandemic subsides and everyone's back to normal, you know, you never want, and this typically won't happen in most cases anyways, but you don't want a parent and a technician and a data sheet at the same time. Just for continuity, you know, you don't want the technician trying to collect data at the same time that the parent does. So we always suggest creating a separate data sheet. And you want to make sure that you go into the settings of that session that you've created and share it with the client. And I'll show you how to do that as well. And the reason for that is that sessions just aren't automatically shared with clients. You know, typically data sheets are automatically shared with technicians, but that's done through the connection process, and you can't do the same thing with a client. You might want to think about sharing the learning tree, and you know, learning tree access is all up to you. Just like you can give access to a technician with view only or edit access, you would share the learning tree with the client the same way. We would recommend view only access. Obviously, you don't want to give a parent editing access to a learning tree. And the reason for this is that if you give them editing access, they can go in, they can essentially make any changes like a BCBA could. They could reorder the branches, they could go in, they can change some of the wording within the programming. It's really, typically we would just recommend view only access so parents can go in and just keep a close eye on the progress that their child is making. Okay. So now we're going to do a walkthrough in the main CentralReach system. Again, I'm going to show you how to set things up in the CentralReach system, and then we'll come back, do a couple more slides, and then we'll get into the actual parent portal so that you can see what that looks like. So I'm going to close out that, and we are going to go over to my test account. Okay, so this is my test account. Obviously not a real therapy, not real people. So no, I don't want anyone to worry about PHI. I'm not sharing anything that's protected health information. But just like we went through on our slides, I wanted to just quickly go into permissions to show you again what those permissions are that you'll need access to. Permissions module is indicated by the padlock icon. And note if you're a BCBA or you're someone who doesn't run the main organization account and you don't see this, it's again, all based on permission, so you might not have access to the actual permission module. You know, if you feel that something needs to be changed in your account, always take that back to your administrator, because they are the ones that kind of run the system and make sure people have appropriate access. Typically in organization, you'll have a permission group set up for your BCBAs. And we really want to go in here to the permissions and make sure that you have those permissions turned on. So again, we talked about under the Learn module, we talked about access, we talked about being able to assign learning trees to clients, and we talked about adding new sessions. Those are the basic permissions you have that you need to have for them to be able to complete what we're talking about today on the webinar. Outside of that, it's completely up to you as an organization about what you want your BCBAs and your team to be able to access. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to go into and start talking about setting up program or parent goals. Really remember what I talked about. We want to make sure that we set up parent goals in the goal bank. So I'm going to go to library and purchased items, because this is typically where you would keep any learning tree templates, whether that's a program book template or your goal bank where all your goals are housed. I like to, and I recommend to all of my clients, to have one goal bank in general, where you would go into that goal bank and you would have all your goals. Some people will have a separate goal bank, maybe for different disciplines. If they have a speech or OT team, maybe some organizations have a different goal bank based on what type of domain you're working on, whether that's communication, or maybe you want a separate goal bank for parent goals. I'm going to keep all of mine in my regular goal bank. And what you'll notice here is that, again, we at CentralReach, we always recommend a 3-tier model. So I'm going to stick with that model for continuity, and we won't get into the reasons why behind that, but just always make sure you're utilizing the 3-tier model. You'll have, my first tier is parent goals, we have child behavior reduction, and then nail biting. So if I want to add a new goal to my parent goals, maybe a BCBA came to me and say, hey, I would like to add this as a program for parents to start working on. Can you please add it to the parent goals so that other BCBAs can have access to it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on parent goals, and maybe I want to establish a short-term goal around the child-specific behavior intervention plan. So I'm going to go to add branch. So again, since this is the short-term, since I'm adding a short-term goal, I want to make sure I'm selected on the long-term goal. If I'm at the main branch of my actual goal bank, it's going to add it as a long-term goal. So I'm going to go to parent goals, and I'm going to add in a cumulative branch. So typically your long-term and your short-term, or your first and second tiers, are cumulative branches within the CentralReach system. The third tier is going to be the one that you're actually collecting the data on. So I'm just going to name it parent will be able to follow child's behavior intervention plan. And again, this is very generic. You can make it as detailed as you want to. Obviously, you're going to have mastery criteria and things like that you want to include. I'm just keeping this short and simple just to kind of show you how to get the process moving and get things set up within the system. So I'm going to do save as a draft. You'll notice it's going to show up under parent goals as a short-term goal. And now I can add my target information. So maybe one of my target goals And here you're going to do add branch, go to data collection. And maybe you want one of your goals to be parent will be able to utilize reactive strategies. And here, just like you can for any of your skill acquisition goals, you can include information in the goal background and description if you want to. You can include an instructional note. So if I click select template, instructional note, if you remember what we were talking about earlier on the slides, is that instructional notes are a nice way to teach parents when they're looking at the session how to measure or target a specific skill. And it's a nice way to present information via the session. Data type, you get the same data types that you would for a regular goal. I won't go into too many details here because I want to get moving and get into the actual client portal. You can do criterion prompting for your parent goals if you want to. Again, completely up to you and how you want to measure and keep track of those specific skills. If you want the system to do it automatically, or if you want your BCBA to have more hands-on approach and visual analysis approach to actual parent goals. So I'm going to hit save as a draft. So now we have my goal bank. We have 2 goals set up in my goal bank. Again, you can put in as many as you want. There's really no limitation here. I always suggest always put your goals in the goal bank first. That way, when your BCBAs go to do their programming, it's a much simpler task and easier for them to set up. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to navigate over to my client's program book. I'm going to show you how to put the program into the client's program book. We're going to go into the sharing settings, and we're also going to create a session for my parent, and I'm going to show you how to share that as well. So for the client's program book, I'm going to choose Gary. Gary's the one that I always operate out of. He has the most detailed information. And then what I can do, what you'll see is this is just my general structure of my program book. I'm going to find my parent goals. So I'm going to go under ABA goals, go to 2019 goals, and I have my own branch here for parent goals. Okay, you'll see that I already have some set up. I'm going to pull them over just so that you can see what that looks like, pulling goals over from the library. So what you would do is if I want to add goals to my parent goals branch, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to do add branch. And instead of creating new ones, I'm going to go to my library. And in here, I can find my goal bank. Remember, we were working out of Pokemon Therapy Goal Bank. I have my parent goals down here. And you'll see that we have that new goal that I just created. One thing to note, be careful about which goals you pull over. I'm already selected on my first tier here. So I only need 2 more tiers to be consistent with my 3-tier model. So I don't want to select parent goals again because that's going to pull over a 4th tier. So I'm just going to select parent will be able to follow the BIP and they'll be able to utilize reactive strategies because I want that data, I want that target branch so that I can collect data. I'm going to add selected. Okay. It's going to prompt you, hey, your goals have been put into the queue. Once you hit refresh, they should be there and readily available unless you're pulling over hundreds of goals. It might take the system a minute to update that. Okay, so we have my parent goals in here. And now I'm ready to create my session. Before we create the session though, I wanted to show you how to share the learning tree. So just like you can share the learning tree with a technician, typically this is done automatically through connections. We can't do that for parents, unfortunately, but what you can do is you can go into the learning tree options. So again, up here in the top left, if you can't see that, oh, well, I guess you can always see it, but you're gonna click on the tree options, the gear icon, go to, you can either click learning tree options, you can click one of these other options. It all takes you to the same pop-up window. And what you're going to do is you're going to put the client's name in here. So the client's name is Gary. I'm going to click Gary and I'm going to select share. I apologize for some of the delay. I think it's my internet here at home. Okay, perfect. And what you'll notice is that any new people that you add to the learning tree, they're going to pop up at the bottom. Gary, you'll see, is defaulted to read only. Remember, you can give them, can edit. I always recommend read only, just because we would only want the parent to come in here and view stuff. We don't want them making any changes. Some people don't give parents access to the learning tree at all, and that's okay. Completely up to you and your organization. So I'm going to hit close, and now I want to create a session for my parents. So I'm going to come up here to Learning Tree Options, and we're going to do Create a Session. And again, a session is just another word for a data sheet. You know, typically, if hopefully many of you are using pen and paper. I remember using pen and paper. We always called them a data sheet. It was some sort of Excel format or whatnot. This is essentially the same thing, just an electronic version of it. And what's nice, instead of having to print out your data sheet every week or every few days because programs are changing, you come in here to this session and you can make those changes individually without having to scrap paper or create a brand new session. But for the parent, I'm going to title this Parent Data Sheet. Since I did it from the client's program book, this is automatically filled out for me. And I'm going to select the program book. And I'm going to, you can do a couple things here. You can either filter to see specific types of branches, or to make it easier, because there's no way to necessarily look for parent goals specifically unless you do a search up here. I would just say go from the parent goal section and see what programs you actually have underneath of there, because if you filter from here and just do data collection, it might be a little bit difficult to know and understand which goals are specifically for parents. So I'm going to do all. Again, you can do a search if you want to, and I'm going to add just my data collection branches, because these are the ones that I want my parent collecting their data on. We don't need to add the short-term or long-term branches unless there's specific information you need them to be able to see from those specific programs. And then I'm going to select Create Session. Okay. So now my session is created. That's fantastic. That's awesome. If the parent logs in right now, they're not going to be able to see any of the hard work that I just did. So what we want to be able to do is we want to share this with the client account as well, just like we did the learning tree, so that when the parents log into the client portal, they can actually see this information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the gear icon, and we're going to go to sharing and access. And I'm going to type out, oh, we can see that Gary's already shared with it. But what you would do is, if Gary wasn't here, you would type out the client's name, select who you want, and then hit share. And it's giving me a warning because Gary's already associated with the session. Something to note is that if you don't want other people in here messing around with the session, you don't want your technicians in here, I would just recommend deleting this so that no one else has access to it, except for maybe the BCBA and organization account. Okay, so I'm going to select save. As long as my client's name is here, that means they'll be able to see the session. So I'm going to hit save. So that's kind of it from the main CentralReach platform. I'm going to jump back to my slides just to show you a few more things, and then we'll really get into what I think is the really cool part of today's presentation. We're really going to look at that client portal and some of the really cool features that you can use to make the client experience at your company amazing and make it easier during these times. So if I go back to my presentation. Okay, so we did our walkthrough. We talked about parent goals. Some things that we didn't talk about yet are messaging and task. There's really not a lot of setup you have to do. You don't have to create a session. You don't have to worry about creating any goals or anything. There are some permissions that people will need access to if you're going to use messaging and task to communicate. And so we just provided a brief slide here. We show, a snapshot of what those permissions look like. I'm not actually going to dive into them. If you do have any questions, let us know. But they need, if you want a BCBA to be able to interact with parents via messaging or task, these are the permissions that we would recommend. So, basic access to the task module. If you guys are utilizing task labels at all, you might want them to be able to have access to at least utilize them. If you want them to be able to message at all, you want to make sure that they have the basic access to the messaging module, and then you also want to make sure they have access to send to clients. Because you can turn on access to messaging, but keep them from being able to message actual clients. And then one other housekeeping thing before we move into the client portal, just the functionality of messaging and task. What can you do? How can you utilize it? And so messaging is really cool in that it's easy for parents to learn how to utilize it because, like I said earlier, it's very similar to email. They would go in, they would click a new message option, they put in, who to send it to, they put in, any files they want to upload, and then the text information that they want to share with you. It's a really great way, a HIPAA compliant way to communicate with your parents, share PHI, share documents, share videos for any video modeling you need to be able to share with them. The next piece is task. You can do the same thing with task. And both of these you can set up for notifications about parents being able to get notifications about messages and tasks when they get a new one. But what's really cool about task is that you can give a parent a task that walks through, this is what you need to set up in order to have a successful session with your child. You need to prepare the environment, have the appropriate materials, maybe if they're working on labeling or tacting something, maybe they need the physical item or flashcards or something, getting ready for the session, making sure that they log into CentralReach. Obviously, if they're accessing the task, they're already logged in, but you might want to make sure that they're going to the session, hitting the play button, etc. So really cool ways to utilize the messages and tasks within the CentralReach system. Okay, so now the part that everyone's probably been waiting for, I know it's the part I've been waiting to show you, is the client portal. No questions yet, sorry. So now I'm going to throw up a different browser and I'm going to show you log into a client portal. Before we do that, I wanted to just show you how easy it is for the parents to access the client portal. So what they're going to do is just like you do, just like any other employee, they're going to go to members.centralreach.com. Okay, they're going to, if they haven't already logged in or you haven't given them a username or password, they're going to select forgot password. Okay. If they don't have a username, they're going to use or enter my email, and this is going to be the email address that they have on file. They enter that in and they hit the reset button. They're going to get an email. They can use the email. The email will prompt them through how to access the system. I'm not going to go through that. It's fairly straightforward. If you need additional assistance, we do have a help article that is available for you to use, or you can share it with the parent if they need to learn how to log in. Okay, so I'm going to log in as my client. And this is the first thing that they're going to see when they log in. They're going to be prompted with a hello Gary. That's going to be the child's name. They're going to have access to widgets just like your employees do. These are the only 4 they get access to. You can't change these, you can't delete them, but parents can move them around if they want to. They can stretch them, they can, shrink them. And what's really cool about the parent portal is that they only get access to what you give them access to. So for example, remember we talked about files. they're not going to be able to see every single file that ever exists for their client or for their child unless you actually share it with them. Same thing with messages or appointments. You know, you have to share it with the parent in order for them to access it. Some things that they can do from the client portal, they can come up here to their account. They can see any notifications. They can customize it if they want to. We only have 4 colors, but they're cool 4 colors. So they have blue, red, white, black. So same thing that you get to customize your account. They can change the home page. You can set up notifications. So if you want parents to receive notifications about messaging or tasks, they can come in here. Note that each parent has to do this. There's no way to bulk do it for every single client at once. And it really is up to the parent to come in here and set up these notifications. We do have another help article available for parents so that they can, if you want to utilize that, to teach them how to come in here and set those up. But you'll notice that they can get for messaging and task. I'm going to skip these because we're not really talking about timesheets or scheduling, but they can turn on these notifications for email or text messaging. If they do select text messaging, they do have to put in their phone number up here, send a verification code, just to make sure that we're sending the notifications to the correct phone number. But they do have the option to set those notifications up. So we're going to go back to the dashboard. Some additional things that we talked about earlier were messaging and module or messaging and files. Parents can easily upload a brand new file if they want to by hovering over the widget. You can see the plus button. So if I click the plus option, it's going to take me to a separate screen. You'll notice that it navigates us to the files module, and I can select which files I want to upload into the system. Okay. From the dashboard, they can also create a brand new message if they want to. So they can add the recipients, who they're sending the message to. Maybe I'm sending it to my BCBA. I can add a subject, any text that I want to. They do get some formatting options, or they can upload files. On the left-hand side, they're going to get access to these various widgets. You know, the team is going to be anyone that they're connected to. If you come in here, this information that pulls is associated with which office location your employee is associated with. It doesn't actually give out any employee home address or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. They can click on the team that they're working with, if it's their BCBA or if it's, you know, their technicians. They can click on. Again, it's going to give them information. However, this is information associated with the office location, nothing else, unless you have the employee's home address set up as an office location. So just keep that in mind. We're going to look at messaging. So if they don't want to use the dashboard for messaging, they can use the messages module. They can come in here, look at all their new messages. They can look at what's been read in the inbox. They could do their sent if they want to see what messages they've sent. Again, they can also send messages from the dashboard, or they can do plus new message up here. And it's just like any other email. You're going to add the recipient, the subject, any text that you want to, and upload a file. So I'm going to just quickly submit a message over to my BCBA. I'm going to type out the title. This is a document related to how session. I can click one of 2 places to upload a file. You know, CentralReach, we like to give you several options to do the same task. So I'm going to click the upload option, and I can select my file, or I can do select files here, and I can select that file that I want to upload and open. You'll notice it's going to attach here. When I hit send message, my BCBA Pikachu is going to receive that message. They might receive a notification if their notifications are turned on, and then it's going to navigate me back to my messaging module. That file that you uploaded, or the parent uploaded, is also going to go into the actual files module. So if I navigate over here to files, you'll see that my account audit file that I sent via message is also in here as well. So if they want to see any files that you've shared with them or that you've given access to, this is also a really cool way to get parents to sign registration forms or reauthorization forms, or if they need to sign off on a session note. This is a really nice way to get them to do it electronically. So what they can do, they can navigate to the files module. You'll see that they get a little red notification that they have a new one. If they want to upload one, they can go to upload new. Or if they want to look at an old one, they can go into the note. They can download it, they can preview it. I just want to see a quick preview. If the parent needs to sign it, they would select note and form. And they would scroll down, find their section that they have to sign. I would type out my name as the parent. And I would do my wonderful signature in here and hit continue. Note that was sarcasm, that's a terrible signature. And then I'm going to hit save. Okay. So then we're going to skip billing and scheduling. You know, we do have some wonderful videos available via the help site that will cover those two. The task module, again, is a nice way to do communication with parents. You know, just like you can do a message, you can also set up tasks. I typically like to encourage people to use tasks because I think it's doesn't get a lot of utilization for the type of function that it provides to people. So what you can do for your parents is maybe this is a new task for, you know, session readiness. Session readiness. And maybe you want to make sure that they have appropriate materials, i.e. flashcards, have CR data sheet open, you know, have telehealth video with BCBA open and ready, or whatever else you want to include in order to make sure parents are ready for their session. What's nice about this is that when the parent gets the task, they'll be able to come in here and they'll be able to look at the task, they can open it up, and whichever instructions you gave them, they'll see those instructions and they'll be able to complete it based on however you told them to do so. They can reply back with comments if they want to ask you additional questions. So it's a nice way for you to also get a notification back saying, hey, you know, this is the question I have, how do I do it? They can complete the task just like you can. And again, as long as you have your notifications set up, they'll be able to do that. The really cool piece is the clinical piece down here. And this was kind of the whole topic of what we were gearing up to today to allow parents to do data collection. So you'll see that my client can access the learning tree. If I click on it, they'll be able to go in here. They'll be able to see the different goals that I'm working on with the child. Maybe I'm working on self-injurious behavior with the client in the clinic. They'll be able to see that data. Since I gave them view-only access, they can't actually do anything in here. They can't edit anything. One thing that I do want to bring up, because it's a question I get all the time, are comments. You'll notice that there's a red notification in here on comments. Parents can come in here and read comments that your technicians have left. So I would say if you're going to give them access to the learning tree, just make sure people are being conscientious about that was a really difficult word to say, by the way. Make sure that they are aware that parents can see this. There's no way to turn it off if you don't want the parents to be able to see it. Just make sure that they don't have access to the learning tree in general. They're not really going to be doing anything in there anyway, so not necessarily a huge deal. What you really want your parents to be focused on is this session section anyways, because this is where the parent is going to go in and they're going to actually collect their data. So what the parent is going to do, they're going to select sessions. They're going to select the name of the session that they're operating out of. Again, since it's a separate data sheet, they won't be able to see any other data sheet available to them. I'm going to click on it, and you'll notice that it looks very similar to what the technician sees. So what I'm going to do, just like a technician would, I'm going to teach them to hit the play button. That's going to start the timer. And then I can go through and I can start collecting my data. So, you know, if we're doing frequency for nail biting, I would go through and collect the data based on how many times I had observed that behavior. You know, if they want to keep track of how well they're doing at utilizing reactive strategies, whatever those goals are, they're going to come in here. Again, parents might need some teaching on what buttons to press, dependent upon whether they got the trial right or wrong. You know, they're going to need some coaching, but they can come in here and they can collect their data. What you'll notice is that they get the same type of view on the right-hand side, just like the technician, so they can see the graph, they can see the trial activity that they've previously done, any description information that you've done in there, and any instructional notes. So remember, we were talking about instructional notes earlier, where you can teach a parent how to do a specific skill. You can include those here in the instructional notes section. They can add comments if they want to add comments. If not, don't worry about it necessarily. If you have any pinned behaviors, typically people will keep for parents, they'll keep everything in any T view just because it's the most simplest view. You don't have to click on too many buttons to access the actual goals, but you can click around, you can select those different goals that you're working on. If parents don't want to see all this extra information, they can hide it. So they can come up here and they can hide this information and access the data that way. Okay. When they're done with their session, they're going to hit the graph all. They'll be able to graph the ones that they have selected the ones that they have added their data to, and they're going to do graph all and end session. And that's the client portal. I feel like we ran through that relatively quickly. Hopefully it gave you the information you were seeking. If you do have questions, I'm actually going to take those now. We do have some time to, about 5 minutes to answer some questions. Give me 1 second. Okay, and I'm going to pop up the Q&A right now. And I'm going to go through the Q&A. Just give me a second as I read through some of these. Rebecca, Lisa, I don't know if you guys have seen any questions that that would be good to answer.
Sure, Justin. Let me point out just a couple to you that I think might be really helpful. Firstly,
Okay.
we've had a couple people ask if the client portal is mobile friendly. So of course the client portal is not accessible via an app, but can you talk about how mobile friendly it is?
Yeah, I mean, so just like your technicians can log into the browser, you can have your parents log into the browser. Obviously, the bigger the device is, the easier it is going to access the different screens. It is very mobile friendly, though. CentralReach is designed to make that. And with the way that the client portal is set up, I think it's a much easier way to navigate. So yes, it's definitely accessible via the browser on someone's mobile phone or device.
Thanks so much. Another question we got is this: if a family has multiple children, can they all be synced to one email or one account?
They can be synced to one email, and what they'll do when they hit the forgot email, they will get an email sent to them that shows them the number of accounts that they have access to. So if they have multiple children, it will list out which children are associated with that email address.
Thank you. We got a question asking, do you have any recommendations for instructional notes for parents?
I don't have any specific recommendations. However, I would say, you know, get as detailed as you want, to be honest, because parents are fairly new to this type of situation. You know, some parents you might have done parent training for before, but instructional notes are really a way to show parents how to teach a specific skill. So if you're working on, you know, I'll just keep going back to tacting for some reason that keeps popping into my head. But if you're really working on tacting and maybe a parent doesn't even understand what the word tact is, you can include a section in the instructional note that says a tact is a label, how to label something. So again, while I don't have any specific recommendations, I think get as specific as possible so that parents really have the tools and resources to measure a program the way that you want it to be measured.
Thank you so much. That is wonderful, Justin. So I've got a question, probably several people have thought about this. Is it possible to disable a module in the client portal? Can you choose, for instance, whether or not you want to show tasks or data collection and so forth?
Yeah, great question. So right now in CentralReach, you cannot. So unfortunately, you know, employees, you get to permission things off. Parents or client portals, you can't do that. But remember, you can determine what you share with the parent. So even though we can't turn off the task module, as long as we're not sending any tasks to the parent, they won't be able to access it. Or as long as, you know, employees don't have access to send messages to clients, they're not going to see any messages pop up. So while we can't manage the actual modules they get access to, you can manage what information is shared with them. Some really cool things coming though for the client portal in the future.
Fantastic, thank you. And since you mentioned sharing, are there any account settings that our customers need to be aware of that automatically share information to the client portal?
The one thing that I would say really pay attention to, and this goes to files or notes and forms, if you have a note and form, for example, like a session note, or you have parent intake documents that include a client signature, because it includes that client signature, it will automatically share that note and form in that file to the portal. So whenever they log in, they'll be able to see that and sign that. That was done by design so that parents can log into their portal and sign. However, anything else outside of that won't automatically be shared.
Awesome, that's fantastic. So if I can grab just a couple more minutes for questions. We did get 2 questions about ABC data collection. Can parents see the ABC data that a therapist has collected? And also, is a parent able to collect ABC data?
Right now, parent ABC data is not available in the parent portal, unfortunately. So if you do want them to collect ABC data, you will have to set up a separate branch and coach them through how to do that on an individual branch. But unfortunately, while the technicians can collect that data, the parent portal does not allow for that.
Fantastic. And are parents able to sign documents other than those timesheets and session notes?
If, as long as anything is entered into the CentralReach system as a note and form template and it has a client signature associated with it, yes, they can sign it. If it's a document that you've uploaded outside of CentralReach, unfortunately, there is no way to attach a client signature to that specific file.
Awesome, thank you. And we'll just do one more question. I know there's a lot of questions here. All of them are absolutely fantastic. But we did get one question about a video for parents. Is it possible to embed that video not in the files module, but perhaps directly into the learning tree so that a parent could see it as associated with the data?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you can do that. What you would do in your learning tree is you would create a separate branch, and instead of creating like a cumulative or a data collection branch, you have the third option before library is resource. And if you click on resource, there will be several different file type option, or there will be several different types of resources that you can include. And one of those is a video. So you can include that video in as a branch, and then you can, if you want to, you can actually add that branch to the session.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Justin. And I know you had a couple more things you wanted to go through. If we do have extra time and you want to take more questions, just let us know.
Okay. Yeah, let me just go through these last few things. So CentralReach, we are committed to ensuring that you as a company are able to continue your business. We have a dedicated page up on centralreach.com with tons of really cool resources. They include resources, previous webinars that we've done. They include resources from various companies like the BACB, the BHCOE on what they're doing and how they're helping. So we do have that page up. It's a really cool way to teach you how to utilize the CentralReach system and access different information to making sure that you can keep your business active and alive today. The next piece that I really wanted to go through is don't forget about our free CEUs that we're offering. You can subscribe by May 31st. There's over 100 CEUs. Once you subscribe or once you register, you get access to those CEUs for 60 days. So really take this opportunity to access those CEUs, your continuing education, regardless of whether you're coming up on your research or not. It's a really cool tool and functionality to take advantage of. The other piece of information I wanted to just throw out there was the telehealth specialist certification. This is a software certification specifically for CentralReach, so it's not anything to do related to any billing certification or anything like that. It really is a certification to teach you how to set up CentralReach to enable telehealth services through the CentralReach system. It even goes into some of the client portal, which is really cool if you wanted to see more information there. It's available at the Institute, see our Institute page. So please feel free to take advantage of that. And it's free through May 31st. Okay. One final thing, if you do have any additional questions, we have great resources available via our help site. There are step-by-step videos, articles. We have Genius Booth hours set up. They're like 20 to 30-minute sessions that you get one-on-one attention from someone here at CentralReach if it's something quick that you need to go over. Also, don't forget that you have tons of representatives here at CentralReach wanting to help you in your business. So, please take as much advantage of CentralReach as you can.